A $1,000 iPhone 15 Pro versus a $400 GoPro Hero 12 Black. These two cameras are actually pretty comparable because iPhones now have action mode for video, and they're actually pretty water resistant. So in this video, we're going to take a look at image quality comparisons, as well as audio quality comparisons, and a few other features to try to determine which of these two cameras is best for everyday usage. I'll be shooting a majority of this video, if not all of it. With both cameras, you're going to be seeing that footage unedited, straight out of camera, so you can make up your own mind about them. This video is not sponsored by GoPro or Apple. I am doing this video because I bought both of these devices with my own money, and I want to know which one is best for using when I'm shooting my travel vlogs and videos. Let's kick things off with a stabilization test with and without the iPhone's action mode. In standard video mode in the iPhone, you can enable enhanced stabilization, which does a pretty good job of stabilizing your footage when you're going at a slow and steady pace. But if you try to run or do any kind of jerky movements with the camera, it really doesn't look so good, especially when compared to Hypersmooth Auto Boost on the GoPro. Now, to get more stable footage on the iPhone, you'll want to enable action mode. It defaults to the wide lens and drops your video quality to 2.8K, but you can choose between 30 and 60 frames per second. I'm going to go at 60 on this one. You might also notice that the camera crops in a bit because it's applying that built-in stabilization. But it does a stellar job of stabilizing the video, and it gets pretty comparable in quality to the GoPro at times. However, GoPro still has a leg up in that it can shoot with its Hypersmooth stabilization in 4K or even 5K resolution, and it can have a wider field of view, which is especially helpful if you're trying to film yourself. In case you didn't know, there are limited digital lenses within GoPro that you can switch between, and GoPro definitely wins when it comes to wide-angle lens choices. You can shoot in wide, super view, or hyper view, all with Hypersmooth stabilization enabled. These are quite a bit wider than the widest iPhone 15 Pro lens. You can also pick up the $80 Max Lens Mod 2.0 and get even wider with Max Super View or Max Hyper View. The Max Lens Mod also lets you have Horizon Lock, which is a beefed-up version of Horizon Leveling that you get with the linear digital lens. Horizon Leveling or Horizon Lock is something that I would love to see in the iPhone. It's incredibly hard to keep your shot level when you're running hard or fully utilizing the action mode. But I do like that you can now enable a leveler on screen for the iPhone. If you want to take close-up macro shots, you really can't do it with the stock GoPro camera, but you can definitely do it with an iPhone, which lets you get within 10 centimeters of your subject. Zooming in is also limited to the linear digital lens on GoPro, which honestly isn't much of a zoom at all. Meanwhile, iPhone lets you shoot in 1x zoom, 2x zoom, 3x zoom, or even more with digital zoom. Just be aware that the image quality does degrade quite a bit if you zoom in too much, but it's a nice feature to have in camera. And you can even zoom while recording, which is something you can't do on GoPro. It is worth noting that if shooting in 5K on the GoPro or even 4K, that gives you more flexibility to crop into your shots without losing too much resolution, especially if you shoot in the 8:7 aspect ratio, which is there namely to let you crop in vertical or horizontal video from the same shot. But all of this cropping has to be done in post-production, and it's overall faster and easier to zoom in on the camera with the iPhone. Also, by cropping in post-production, you won't get that smooth bokeh or blurred out background effect. In fact, it's nearly impossible to do that on an action camera. One advantage that iPhones have over GoPros is the ability to shoot in cinematic mode, which blurs out the background, and you can do that in either photos or videos. Now, there are some limitations to shooting in cinematic mode. You're limited to shooting in either 4K 30 or 24 frames per second, and you can't shoot in ProRes or action mode. But I do love the f-stop toggle to control your depth of field. It makes the iPhone feel more like a camera when you're shooting with it. Now, by now you've seen quite a few image quality comparisons in this video, but let's go more in depth. Based on resolution alone, GoPro wins for being able to shoot it up to 5.3K 60 frames per second, while the iPhone is capped at 4K 60 frames per second on both the back-facing camera and the front-facing camera. Both GoPro and iPhone can shoot slow-motion video, but again, GoPro is able to shoot at a higher resolution, such as 4K 120 frames per second slow-mo, and 2.7K 240 frames per second ultra slow-motion. Meanwhile, iPhone can only shoot 120 frames per second and 240 frames per second in 1080p. So if you need the top resolution, GoPro is generally the better pick. However, there are a few more factors to consider. First up is HDR, or High Dynamic Range Video. It's brand new in the GoPro Hero 12, while iPhones have had HDR video for a while now. Now at times, I don't see a huge difference in the lighting quality between the two cameras when shooting in HDR. But in extreme contrast, I think that GoPro handles HDR better when it comes to preserving highlights or hotspots in extreme contrast. Also, GoPro has overall more sharpness and detail, and also has more stable video in the form of Hypersmooth. iPhone lets you shoot HDR in action mode at a lower resolution of 2.8K, and with a slight crop in the shot, and it definitely helps with stabilization. But in high contrast, you lose quite a bit of detail in your shot. However, a loss of detail can actually be better for shooting a face. Now, some people argue with me that they don't like to see skin smoothing effects on cameras. And neither camera has this exact feature, but I definitely prefer how the iPhone makes my skin look compared to the GoPro. Still, in most lighting conditions, HDR really isn't the most flattering for skin tones on either camera. Log footage is also something new in the GoPro Hero 12, and it's an option on the iPhone 15 Pro as well in the form of ProRes Log. Now on the iPhone, you can only shoot in ProRes if you have an SD card attached or a portable hard drive connected. Also, be aware that you'll need to edit log footage, otherwise it will appear dull and flat. But the benefit is that you can more easily apply your own custom LUTs or presets to style your video. Apple Log is definitely more flat than GoPro Log, so it's a little bit easier to edit. But at times, I personally prefer the look of GoPro Log, but I really think it comes down to personal preference and taste at that point. Now, while we all know that the GoPro is fully waterproof, the iPhone 15 Pro has an IP rating of 68, meaning it can go up to 6 meters underwater in freshwater for up to 30 minutes. In this swim test, both cameras perform pretty well, but GoPro has the advantage of being able to shoot wider and also have horizon leveling or horizon lock. Action mode on the iPhone crops in quite a bit, and it makes it really challenging to film selfie style underwater, but it is doable. Now after getting your iPhone wet, be sure to rinse it off in clean water and let it dry out fully before using any ports. And also, don't get your phone wet if it has any cracks or chips in it. When it comes to low light shooting, iPhone blows GoPro out of the water in terms of image brightness when shooting with enhanced stabilization. Yes, the shot is shaky, but at least you can see what you're filming. However, when shooting in action mode on the iPhone, you will get a warning sign that you will need more light, and the resulting brightness is about the same as the GoPro, but with a tighter crop and less resolution. But the iPhone does have a built-in light that you can set to continuous, so that really helps it shoot in the dark. Meanwhile, if you want to add a light to the GoPro, you have to buy the light and even a cage to attach it to the GoPro to get a similar effect. So neither of these cameras are really ideal for shooting in low lights, but if you absolutely must, I'd pick the iPhone while shooting in non-action mode and put it on a gimbal like the DJI OM6 to get more stabilization. Both cameras have built-in microphones that sound pretty good, but I do prefer the GoPro sound overall because I think it does a better job of voice isolation, especially if there's any external noise or wind. There's a bit of wind coming through, so you might be able to hear that difference right now, but I do think that the GoPro handles the audio a little bit better than the iPhone does. Another advantage of the GoPro is that it can come with an optional media mod, which has its own built-in microphones that does an even better job of wind reduction. And that media mod also has a 3.5mm microphone jack and a cold shoe mount for attaching your own external microphone. Now iPhones, the iPhone 15 is the first one to come with USB-C, so you can attach a microphone that way, but unless you're using the DJI microphone, you'll have to also supply a cold shoe mount or a way to attach that microphone to the phone. So overall, it's just a little bit more convenient to do it with a GoPro. Both the iPhone and the GoPro can shoot in-camera time lapses, but the stock iPhone camera app is pretty limited. I don't think you can really control any of these settings here other than exposure, and there's no hyperlapse or stabilized moving time-lapse mode. Meanwhile, GoPro has pretty robust time-lapse presets, including night lapse and star trails, and a custom time-lapse mode. It also has hyperlapse in the form of time warp, which I love shooting as transitional pieces in my videos. Now let's talk photography. The iPhone 15 Pro almost definitely wins in terms of having more photo settings, like shooting with bokeh in photo mode using the new aperture toggle, or switching over to portrait mode. And if you want to change your depth of field after you've snapped the photo, you can actually do that while editing. You also have 2 zoom toggles in portrait mode, or in photo mode, you can zoom in to 3 times or even more with digital zoom. The zoom doesn't always produce the best quality, but it's better than not being able to zoom in much at all. Portrait mode also lets you select lighting conditions, or down in the settings, you can turn the flash on and off, select your f-stop and aspect ratio, control exposure or image brightness, set a countdown timer, or apply a filter. Now, even though GoPro is a video-centric camera, it does have a photo mode, but its settings and controls are quite a bit more limited compared to iPhone. You can pick between 2 digital lenses, set a countdown timer, interval shooting, or scheduled capture. But its main photo feature is having multiple photo formats, including normal, HDR, super photo, or RAW. However, the GoPro photo aspect ratio is locked in at 4:3, and no ability to select your aperture or blur your background out. By the way, both the iPhone and the GoPro can shoot RAW images. I don't know about you, but I personally prefer iPhone for all things photography. Both of these cameras have front-facing screens so you can monitor your video as you shoot it. However, it's a little limited on the iPhone since you also have to shoot with the front-facing camera to get that front-facing screen. Now, the front-facing iPhone camera is actually much better than it used to be. On the iPhone 15 Pro, you can now use it to shoot in 4K 60, ProRes, or cinematic mode. But it doesn't have the array of lenses and no action mode like the back-facing cameras do. The iPhone's overall preview screen is also a lot bigger than GoPro's, and it's a touchscreen. Now, one of the main benefits to shooting on an iPhone is that you can choose from hundreds, if not thousands, of apps to change up your camera and edit or post-process your media straight from the device. Personally, I'm a fan of Lightroom for photo editing, and LumaFusion for video editing, and Filmic Pro for in-camera video shooting. There are also tons of physical iPhone accessories for enhancing image quality, like lenses and filters. For GoPro, you've got to move the media off the camera yourself in order to edit it. GoPro does have a quick app for phones and soon desktop computers for editing videos. I'll hold my comments on that since the new version isn't quite out yet, but you definitely can't edit videos from the camera itself or change up the shooting interface. There are also lots of GoPro shooting accessories like filters and a few lenses out there, but there aren't nearly as many image enhancement accessories as iPhone has. But GoPro does have a lot more accessories for doing action because it is an action camera. When it comes to battery life, iPhone definitely reigns supreme with a battery life of about 9 hours and 20 minutes. But the battery is built in and can't be replaced when it dies. The GoPro battery is a lot more modest at about 70 minutes and 5K 60, assuming you don't get overheating at about the 40-minute mark like I tend to. But the good news is you can swap out the battery for a fresh one anytime. Speaking of overheating, my iPhone 15 Pro does get really hot to the touch at times, but not to the point of shutting down due to overheating. Now, I used to cite onboard media storage as a con for iPhones, since you couldn't really put an SD card in. But thanks to the iPhone 15 Pro now having USB-C, you can actually connect a USB-C card reader, and you can add an SD card for more storage. So it's actually more on par with GoPro in that sense, although this card reader can get in your way and it isn't waterproof. So it's still a comparison point worth considering for certain types of filming. But speaking of storage, let's talk about the cloud. Both GoPro and Apple offer cloud storage to automatically back up your media. The Apple Cloud gives you about 5 gigabytes free, but most of us will need much more storage than that for storing our photos and videos. Now, the price varies by country, but here in the USA, it's as low as 99 cents per month for about 50 gigs of storage, or up to $60 a month for 12 terabytes of storage. Meanwhile, the GoPro Cloud costs $50 a year, and it gives you unlimited cloud storage at 100% quality, plus other perks like discounts on GoPro purchases and no questions asked camera replacement. Speaking of, iPhone insurance is sold separately in the form of AppleCare. And considering how expensive phones are these days, I recommend having some kind of insurance on it. So in conclusion, which of these two cameras is best for you? As you've probably seen, the GoPro and the iPhone have a lot in common, but they're still very different cameras with very specific applications. For everyday casual shooting, my go-to is still the iPhone. It offers the best features and ergonomics in terms of taking photos and videos. And I don't usually vlog with my iPhone. I use it to take supplementary B-roll and snapshots. But since I typically vlog while walking or moving, I need the best built-in stabilization and the widest fields of view. So the GoPro is still my top choice for my style of vlogging. And obviously as an action camera, GoPro is still ideal for its more secure waterproofing and overall tough exterior. But it's really crazy that in a pinch, you can actually use an iPhone for very light action shots. So in reality, I personally use both cameras to make my travel vlogs and videos, and I think they're a great team. But you let me know what you think in the comments below. Which of these two cameras is best for you, or are you like me and you actually use both cameras? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned because I've got more videos on both of these cameras coming out, including in-depth setup guides as well as accessory guides to both iPhone and GoPro.